But none of this would have happened. The Budapest Memorandum, that wasn't a peace deal. That was an engraved invitation for Putin to probe the West, see what kind of spine they've got. And so far, all he found is jelly. Fucking pathetic.
I hope you're ready. I'm about to perform a public disservice.
You know, sometimes history just pops you in the mouth. The Trumpster met with Vladimir Putin last week and a group of European heads of state a few days later. What have they achieved? So far, two things. Jack and shit.
And Jack left town.
So let's do a very, very quick history lesson over how all this started, who precisely is to blame, and why it's going to get worse before it gets better. I guess you could go all the way back in history to the Slavic tribes and Greco-Roman influence and the Varangians and blah, 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 blah. Really, you don't have to. Just for this, you just have to go back to the 1991 breakup of the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Ukraine, at the time, was a Soviet republic. Not by choice, of course. The Red Army invaded and took Kiev in 1919 because, you know, Russia. But after the Soviet collapse, Ukraine inherited the third largest nuclear arsenal on Earth, all the bombs and the mobile missile launchers left over from when the Soviet Union went tits up. Almost 2,000 warheads. What did they do? They gave them up. For a variety of reasons that aren't important. Mostly, they just couldn't afford to store them and maintain them safely. They surrendered them for disassembly, and they weren't terribly concerned because they had the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia, all three opposing parties. They all together signed the Budapest Memorandum. It was this document promising that Ukraine's borders would be respected and their sovereignty would be guaranteed. And so Ukraine had security assurances from three world powers. Sounds great, right? Well, you can probably piece together where this is going. Those promises turned out to be more worthless than 1,000 Russian rubles at a Moscow nudie bar. Listen, Putin figured this game out a long, long time ago. Hey, see if you can spot the pattern here. Let's take Chechnya, this little North Caucasus Mountains, South Central Asia little crap country. Twice in the 90s and early 2000s, Russia rolled into Chechnya with tanks and artillery. Whole cities reduced to rubble. The capital city, Grozny, was labeled the most destroyed city on Earth. Do you think the United States or United Nations did anything? No, we barely noticed. The Republic of Georgia, another Central Asia shithole, 2008. Russia invades South Ossetia and Abkhazia, another sovereign country carved up by force. This time, the United States will not stand for it. Charles, do you know what we did?
Nothing.
We held a press conference. And we wagged our finger like this, I think, a little bit. You see, once again, Putin tested the waters. And the message he got back was, throw your trash wherever you like. There's no lifeguards here. Crimea, 2014. Russia literally takes a province from Ukraine, plants a flag, and says, this is ours now. The American response? Sanctions. Sanctions? Oh God, not sanctions. Anything but sanctions. See, Putin annexed part of another country in broad daylight, and he got away with it. And then Syria. Vicious dictator Bashar al-Assad. He's nerve-gassing his own civilians for daring to defy his rule. A civil war is tearing the place apart. Who shows up? To prop up the dictator? Russia. They bomb schools, hospitals, aid convoys, war crimes on an industrial scale. And the West? We mostly shrugged. A couple airstrikes against ISIS camps that were popped up in the desert. But nothing. Nothing to oppose Putin. Nothing to stop him from entrenching himself in North Africa. So when people act surprised that Putin invaded Ukraine in 2022, I feel like laughing. What do you mean surprised? This guy's been leaving a trail of destruction across Eurasia for 20 years. And every single time, the so-called international community looked the other way. Why wouldn't he think he could just roll into Ukraine and face nothing but strongly worded letters? You want someone to blame? Okay, I'll give you someone to blame. Because a lot of people are to blame. Both parties in the United States dropped the ball. George W. Bush shit the bed. Obama shit the bed. Biden shit the bed. Trump shit the bed. Remember what Putin fears most. NATO troops and Western influence right at his doorstep. During Trump's first term, pay attention here, Trump approved the transfer of some rocket and artillery systems to Ukraine, right? Normally, Putin wouldn't flinch or be shaken by a couple of rocket launchers, but these were dual-use launchers. They could send conventional rockets and artillery, or they could be outfitted to launch nuclear weapons as well. And Putin made it very clear that he could not allow it to be parked in his own backyard. He protested. The United States hemmed and hawed and deliberated a little bit, and then we sold it to them anyway. And that was the giant red line for Russia. But what did Putin learn about American red lines? Well, they're more like pink, and they're just suggestions, really. So here we are now, 3 years into this shit, and Putin still playing chess, thinking 5 moves ahead, while Trump is trying to figure out, why does this Monopoly board look so weird? Come on, man. Even the most diehard Trumpsters, use your critical thinking. This is a former KGB agent, trained in geopolitics, interrogation, manipulation, versus a former game show host. Who has the edge here? I get it. It might be meaningless. Putin has never honored an agreement in his life, but Trump thinks he's the guy who's going to outmaneuver him? I'll tell you what really bothers me. I have never in my life seen such weakness from an American president. Any president in my lifetime, Republican or Democrat, they would have shown far more backbone than this. You think Bush the first, not Colonel Clusterfuck, the first one, Herbert Walker Bush, you think he would have allowed this to happen? You think Reagan would have allowed this to happen? They would have told Putin directly, turn your troops around and go home, or else we're opening the entire US military arsenal to Ukraine and we're letting them run fucking roughshod all over your broke dick army. Because that's how deterrence works. Instead, we've shown hesitation, confusion, a total lack of resolve. Not just us. The Europeans too. We've been using half measures when full measures are called for. Because once again, this is Americans not understanding the people with whom they're dealing. Russians do not respond to half measures. They see it as a weakness and as an invitation to advance. And now, frankly, I don't think Trump can broker a real peace. Not with someone like Putin across the table. And frankly, it pains me to say this, but I think the United States is as good as out on this. We're done. We used to be the lead. We used to set the example for freedom and democracy and rule of law around the world, but we've surrendered that position of global leadership in favor of abject cowardice. So I think the Europeans are going to have to take the lead here. They're going to have to properly arm Ukraine with state-of-the-art weapons, air power, intelligence, everything, because that's the only way this ends, by forcing Russia out. Because force is all Russians understand. And I get the tragic irony. I understand if Ukraine had just held on to those nukes in the first place, granted, the world would be inherently more dangerous with 2,000 more warheads in it, but none of this would have happened. The Budapest Memorandum, that wasn't a peace deal. That was an engraved invitation for Putin to probe the West, see what kind of spine they've got. And so far, all he found is jelly. Fucking pathetic. Like, share, click subscribe. Or don't. I sincerely don't give a shit.
I will give you dance for a potato.
1,000 rubles is $12.
Is it?
That might actually go a long way with a desperate Russian farmer.